Life tests you when you least expect it. For me, that moment came during an ordinary dinner with my wife's old friends. I learned that the person who had been by my side for years, my closest friend, confidant, the person I shared my life with, had been lying to me for 20 years. As the truth began to unfold, I would discover just how deep the secrets went and how skillfully they had been hidden. Before I dive into my story, if you don't want your life to be turned upside down like mine, subscribe to my channel to learn real lessons from the real stories we share every day, just like mine. Also, share your thoughts about the shocking truths I've experienced in the comments, and please show your support by liking my video. Now that you've subscribed, let's dive into my story. It all started during that dinner with my wife's friends from university. There was laughter around the table, and old memories were being shared. One of her friends began recounting a story from the past, but suddenly, my wife tensed up and quickly shifted the conversation to another topic. My wife, who was always calm and composed, acted in a way that was completely out of character. This strange reaction made me feel that something wasn't right. On the way home, my mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts. Why had she reacted that way? Was there something she was hiding? I couldn't stop myself from asking her, "Why did you act like that over something so insignificant?" I said, my tone impatient. She merely shrugged and said, "It was nothing. Don't make a big deal out of it," trying to close the topic. But these evasive answers didn't satisfy me. Deep down, I knew there was something more to this. My suspicions grew with every passing minute. The next day, one of my wife's friends pulled me aside with a worried expression. She said, "I need to tell you something. You really need to have an honest conversation with your wife. There are things she hasn't told you." These words only fueled my suspicions further. There was no turning back now. I wasn't going to let this go. That evening, when we got home, my wife and I sat face to face in the living room. I was the first to break the silence. "After everything that happened today, I have some doubts," I said firmly. My wife lowered her gaze. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling. I could feel the weight of the lie. "Something's wrong with you," I said. "You've been hiding something from me for a long, long time, and I need to know what it is." There was a long pause. Finally, she took a deep breath and looked at me. "Okay," she said slowly. "I'll tell you everything." The evasive look in her eyes was a warning of the storm about to come. "When I was in college, when we were apart, I was with other men," she confessed. The moment I heard those words, it felt like my world collapsed. It was as if a knife had pierced my heart. "What do you mean you were with other men?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked away, as if the weight of the confession had sunk her. "A few men. I don't remember exactly how many, maybe 10, maybe more, but at the time it didn't seem to matter. We were in a long-distance relationship. I didn't think we would be serious." Those words ignited the anger inside me. "You didn't think we'd be serious? Weren't we a couple at the time? All those weekends I visited you, the time we spent together, how could you betray me like that?" Her voice lowered even further. "It was a mistake," she said. "It's in the past now. There's no point in bringing it up again." But for me, it wasn't in the past. I was questioning every moment, every gesture, every ounce of love we had shared. "What about the friends you introduced me to back then? Were they part of this?" I asked, my words catching in my throat. She didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, "Yes, some of them were." That confession felt like a volcano erupting inside me. She had lied to me for 20 years. How could I ever trust her again? I couldn't hold back my anger. "You lied to me for 20 years, I shouted. "Our life has been nothing but a lie." "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but I saw it as a mistake and left it behind." But for me, this wasn't a simple mistake. This was a betrayal that spanned 2 decades. Every smile, every touch, every moment felt like part of a life lie. My anger swelled uncontrollably. "I want a divorce," I said coldly. "I can't continue this marriage." She stared at me in shock. But it was just a mistake," she stammered. "We were young. I didn't think it was serious." "This isn't just a mistake," I said through clenched teeth. This is a lie that has lasted for 20 years. You didn't just betray me back then, you've been lying to me my entire life. From that moment on, my decision was final. The divorce process began. My wife still didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what had happened. My family, my friends, they all opposed me. Don't throw away all those years of marriage over one mistake, they said. But this wasn't just one mistake. It was a chain of betrayals that had lasted for years. When I told my family and friends about the divorce, their reaction was surprisingly negative, especially my family. They argued that I shouldn't end a long marriage over a few mistakes. My mother kept saying, "No one is perfect, everyone makes mistakes." But this wasn't just a simple mistake. A betrayal that had lasted for 2 decades was much more than just a few errors. There was also immense pressure from society. People claimed that long-term marriages should never end, that forgiveness and saving the relationship were paramount. But for me, this marriage was beyond saving. There was no way I could forgive my wife's years of lies. Despite everyone's expectations, I had to choose my own path. Telling my children about the divorce was one of the hardest moments. One evening, I sat them down and explained the situation. "Why?" Dad asked. My older son, his eyes filled with confusion and disappointment. My heart clenched, but I knew I was doing the right thing. "There are things that happen between your mother and me," I said. "But that doesn't change how much we love you." I wasn't sure how to explain this to them. Learning about their mother's mistakes would deeply affect them. That night, I lay awake wondering how this process would leave its mark on their lives. How could I protect them? As we entered the divorce process, my wife, the children, and I started going to therapy. Our therapist taught us how to communicate healthily during this time. At first, my wife refused to fully acknowledge the depth of her betrayal. But over time, during our therapy sessions, she began to admit her mistakes. However, it was too late. The years of deception had irreversibly shattered our marriage. What I learned in therapy helped me not only end my relationship with my wife, but also rebuild myself. Trust wasn't something that could easily be restored. This process forced me to reinvent myself from within. I had to fill the void inside me with my own strength. Our children began to accept the situation. They were nearly adults, but this process still left deep scars in their lives. My older son distanced himself from his mother. My younger daughter, on the other hand, tried to approach the situation with more understanding. Their maturity brought me some comfort, but deep down, I still worried about how this would affect them. When the divorce process was finally complete, I took a deep breath. My marriage had ended, but this wasn't just an ending. It was also a new beginning for me. In this new beginning, I was determined to shape my life based on my own values. The pain and betrayal I had experienced in the past taught me how fragile and unpredictable life could be. However, this fragility also made me a stronger person. The difficult lessons life had given me showed me that I needed to be more cautious in the future, and most importantly, that I needed to regain my self-confidence. In my new life, I aimed to shed old habits and become a healthier and happier individual. I built a new home for myself, established a new routine, and began to find stability. During this time, my friends and family supported me immensely. Although the divorce process was painful and difficult, in the end, this experience made me a stronger and more mature person.